Hari Ramai. So I hope you guys had a nice holiday back then. Christmas se katti vera holiday sutti vera ati. Now slowly starting things on with the new year coming on, and new year, new goals and new commitments and new hopes and new exams also coming up for next year. I think I hope by now so far that you guys might have been in a proper stand that we are the padang karala papers karala up to a level you might have come, right? So the next month, full month would be very crucial because that's pretty much the last month that you can do whatsoever the plans you do have. Antim මාස කරන්න පුළුවන් උපරිමය කරන්න, right? එතකොට වෙන වැඩ ඔක්කොම නවත්තන්න පුළුවන් තරමක් අඩු කරන්න, stop කරන්න and just give your focus and attention heavily on the parts that you are going to focus as your exam, right? ඉතින් ඒක තමයි plan එක. So as we discuss and as we plan, we'll be having 3 more papers in the coming month, and we have a paper to be discussed also. ඒකත් අපි කතා කරනවා අනිත් plan ටිකත් කරගෙන යනවා. So today's discussion and today's class is, as I mentioned in the group also, pretty much focused on this, right? On lesson 11 and 12. Hari. So pretty much by now you know where that hardly I would presume that you would be writing these 2 questions, right, in your second part. Right? I know for a fact these would be pretty much focused on your MCQs, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Man danno ala godak mamat e kale hemai oyalath ehema thamai. I know you focus on these 2 lessons pretty much on MCQs, and in your MCQs pretty much the last 10 questions, right? Ekam part එක statistics අහනවා. මම statistics and අපේ තියෙන indexes ටික තියෙන්නේ, economic development index, happiness index ඒ ටික, right? ඒවා and plus specifically on the statistics, right? ඒ කියන්නේ specifically GDP growth rate එක, එතකොට unemployment rate එක, අර foreign දැන් මේ දවස්වල තියෙන ලොකුම ප්‍රශ්න reserves, right? Reserves, tax proportions, tax කොහමද වෙනස් වුනේ, income tax percentage එක කීයද, VAT percentage එක කීයද, tax revenue percentage එක කීයද out of GDP, debt to equity ratio එක කීයද, අර ඒ වගේ පොඩි parts එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ ටික ඔක්කොම statistically pretty much on your level 12th, right? ඒ ටික ඔක්කොම මම පොඩි document එකක් වගේ හදලා I'll be sharing with you. ඒක ඔයාලා කැමති කෙනෙක් එක්ක share කරගන්න. ඒකේ ඔක්කොම තියෙනවා summarize කරපු statistics ටික, right? ඒක exam එක ලඟ වෙලා බලාගත්තම 4-5 පාරක් ඇති because pretty much last 10 MCQs of your paper, right? Make a minimum, right? 4, right? 4 to 5, right? 4 to 5 would be coming from that document which I'm going to share with you, right? 4න් 5ක් maybe 6ක් විතර, right, would be coming from the document. ඒකේ ගොඩක් යට තියෙන්නේ key statistics and these dimensions of these indexes. Human development index, අර index, මේ index, ඒ වාස්සේ තියෙන parts. එතකොට ඒක මම ඔයාලට දෙනවා. Maybe next week වෙද්දී you will have it. Right, next week you will have it. එතකොට central bank annual report එක refer කරන්න පුළුවන් කෙනෙක් refer කරන්න. කෙනෙක් හිතුවා මට ඒක refer කරන්න වෙලාව නැහැ කියලා, then you can refer that document. ඒකේ තියෙනවා in one snap all the key variables and all the key metrics that you need to study and keep things in your mind, right? එතකොට ඒක 4 to 5 විතර coming from there. And the remaining, right, 6 to 5, right, would be coming from these 2 lessons. Ekenut pretty much on your level. Index parts මෙතන තියෙන index එක දෙක තුනක් විතරින් එහෙම pull out කරලා මෙතනට දාන්න පුළුවන්, but 11th එකෙන්, right, frequently දේවල් ටිකක් අහනවා, right? So today we will be giving more weightage on this 11th lesson, and if time permits අපේ 12th එකේ තියෙන key exam එකේ frequently අහන key parts ටිකක් කතා කරලා, right, we will wind the class, right? That's the plan goes. And it was next week as usual we'll be continuing discussion with the 3rd question paper we did, and then 4th and 5th it goes with the flow like before, right? So in the 11th lesson, specifically in your MCQs, there are again frequent things that will be tested. දැන් අපි මේ මුලින්ම කතා කරන්න යන්නේ මොනවද exam එකේ frequently අහන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. හරි. Right now if you have studied already, බලන්න මට මේ මම කියන sub topic එක ගැන whether you know everything, right? The first and foremost what you need to know, right, in a usual context is what do you mean by economic growth and rate? මේක තමයි පළවෙනිම එක economic growth rate right මේ statistics මෙතන තමයි හැමදේම පටන් ගන්න economic growth rate මේක ගැන තමයි අපි ලොකුවට කතා කරන්නේ in the 12th lesson right මේක just a start then what you need to know is right about labor force right labor force and population මේකත් එක තමයි population part එක කියන්නේ එතකොට death rate එක birth rate එක labor force participation rate එක mid year population එක ඒකත් එක්ක මේක link කරලා per capita income එක ඒව ටික දානවා කියලා බලන්න. Next part is pretty much on employment and unemployment. Right? And unemployment ඒ part එක. તો employment එක calculate කරන්න කොහොමද? labor force participation එක කොහොමද යන්නේ? population එකත් එක්ක කොහොමද relationship එක? ඒ part එක. Then the next part is which is frequent testing again the poverty line. Poverty. Right? Poverty, right? We have the absolute poverty, we have the relative poverty, we have the functional poverty, right? ඒ වගේ එක එක chart දේවල් තියෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ poverty head count index, poverty line, right? ඒතකොට වගේ පොඩි parts එකක් තියෙනවා. You need to be very clear cut. Poverty. Right? මේ ඔක්කොම frequent MCQs. මේවා the MCQs තමයි. The next one is inequality. Right? එතකොට inequality කොහොමද check කරන්නේ, right? Dispersion ratios, then Gini coefficients, right? Lorenz curves, right? And the next part, right? So in the 11th lesson, pretty much these are the most frequent things that would be tested in your exam. ඊට පස්සේ 12th එකේ තියෙනවා economic growth, then sustainable development, then yes, gross happiness index, right? Development index, ease of doing business index, right? ඒ වගේ indexes එක development එක ගැන කතා කරනවා. මේක ඇත්තටම පොඩි broad topic එකක්. The differences between development and sustainable development, bringing growth and development, the differences. Amartya Sen who came into place. එයා තමයි ඔය කතා ගොඩක් කිව්වේ. ඉතින් ඒ ඔක්කොම 12th එකේ කතා කරනවා. මේව ඉතින් අර second part එකේ exam එකට ලියනවා නම් හරිම tricky. මොකද ගොඩක් වෙලාවට මේකේ අනිත් part එක තමයි ලංකාවේ economic policy එක. How it has been come from early days ඒක ආපු හැටි මේක ලොකුට කතා කරනවා right මේක තියෙනවා which is latter part එක ඊට පස්සේ ඒක combine වෙනවා මේකට right අපේ indexes ටික ඔක්කොම මෙතන තමයි තියෙන්නේ right economic growth and development index ඊට පස්සේ අපි ඒක combine කරනවා මේකත් එක්ක flow එක ඔම යනවා right එතකොට අපි ඒක ගැන ලොකු focus එකක් දෙන්නේ නැහැ මොකද as I mentioned මම ඒක ඔයාලට document එකක් හදලා දෙන්නම්. ඒතර at a glance time waste කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. බලාගත්තම කටපාඩම් කරගෙන යන්න පුළුවන් exam එකට, right? හරි. So that's the plan. So we'll be giving focus priority on these key things and you would get around at least around it might vary from 4 to 6 MCQs out of these things. හරිද? මේක තමයි පළවෙනි understanding එක you need to have. අන්තිම MCQs 10න් loku weight එක, right? A significant portion would be covered from your these parts, right? දැන් හොඳට clarify කරගන්න මේ හැම එක ගැනම හැම දේ ගැනම in detail අරන් ඉන්න මොනවද මේක ඇස්සේ තියෙන්නේ. හරි? Nice. Let's start from the beginning, starting with this simple development and growth. Right? So first and foremost, what you need to know, understanding here is first part, the differences between economic growth and development. Right? Again, I'm telling you the same thing. මම මේක ගැන වෙනම අර indexes ගැන වෙනම sheet එකක් වල document එකක් sub දෙන්න ඒක බලා ගන්න ඒක ඇතුලේ තියෙනවා. But then චුට්ටක් overall bigger picture understand කරගන්න what do you mean by this, right? So simple context, what you need to understand is economic growth and development are two different principles, two different concepts, right? So economic growth is pretty much will calculate based on our GDP. Development, we always call development, it is pretty much a multi-dimensional aspect, right? Make economic growth එක පැත්තයි, but development this is multi-dimensional. මේ unidimensional එක dimension එකයි තියෙන්නේ මොකද්ද GDP. හරිද? Economic growth GDP එක වැඩි වෙනවා නම් we call it as what? Growth. Over the time GDP increase, we call it as what? Economic growth. So what we can find is out of this economic growth rate. Right? මේ තමයි පළවෙනි මෙදී අපි check කරන්නේ. Right? කොහොමද ඒක check කරන්නේ? හරිද? Economic growth rate එක. Right? Simple context. මම මේ examples වල දාලා ගන්න because it takes time. If we calculate growth rate, right? අපි මේකට පොඩි simple notations use කරනවා මම ඒක explain කරන්න හොඳට අහගන්න, right? GDP, right, of the considering year, right? අපි ඒකට කියනවා T එක. Right? GDP of the considering year minus GDP of the previous year. Statistics කරන ළමයිට මේක තේරෙනවා, right? GDP of the considering year minus GDP of the previous year. කලින් අවුරුදු GDP එක divide by GDP of the previous year. T minus 1 කියන්නේ කලින් අවුරුදු multiply by 100. මේක තමයි simplyම අපි දන්න, right? අපි හැමෝම දන්න GDP growth rate එක, right? So in economics, what we believe is pretty much if the GDP increase from an year to year, right? ඒක continuously දිග කාලයක් වෙනවා නම් අපි ඒකට කියනවා මොකද්ද? Economic growth rate එක කියලා, right? This is first and foremost you need to understand. හරි නේද? හරි. Next one is මම කියුවා development is multidimensional. Multidimensional කියන්නේ එක part එකක්, එක dimension එකක් would be a GDP. Right? Anik dimensions, right? Anik dimensions ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. අපි නිකන් frequently කතා කරන එක dimension එකක් තමයි මොකද්ද? Education එක. Right? GDP අපි මේකට කියන economical dimension එක කියලා. This is the economical perspective. නැත්නම් financial, economical, right? GDP, education and health. ඕක තමයි dimension සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි තියෙන්නේ. දැන් එතකොට in your level you need to understand hari development is something bigger, not only one thing, right? It's a very vast area. Habai you have given what? Human development index, then gross happiness index, RA index, may index කියලා different indexes තියෙනවා. ඒ index එකකදී use කරන variable might vary. Like simple context human development index එක economic කියලා ගන්න මොකද්ද? GDP නෙමෙයි. මොකද ගන්න මේ වෙනකොට? What? From the GDP, they calculate something called per capita income. Right? Make them a point that what you understand. So economic growth, yes, we have the gross growth happens right from year to year. Meantime, we need to understand how it impacts on how it changes per person, from person to person. අපේ income එක කොහොමද වෙනස් වෙන්නේ කියලා. ඒකට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Per capita income. So how to find per capita income? මේක තමයි අනිත් කතාව. Right? Per capita income equals what? GDP of the considering year divided by the mid-year population. Right? From the mid-year population. සම්පූර්ණ income එක අපේ mid-year population එකට බෙදලා. ඒකට තමයි එක්කෙනෙක්ට කීයක් දෙන්නේ කියලා. මේක තමයි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට අපි countries compare කරන්න. A country to country be compared, we use what? We use per capita income. අපි country to country compare කරන්න we use what? Per capita income. Not pretty much GDP. We know when the country becomes large, the GDP tendency to be high. Country becomes small, GDP tendency to be low. Right? දැන් අපේ ලංකාව කොහොමත් පොඩි when it compares to China. එතකොට ඒ GDP එක ලොකුයි. අපේ GDP එක පොඩි. එතකොට කෙනෙක්ට කියන්න බෑ at a glance that GDP එක අපේ පොඩි හින්දා we are a poor country කියලා. හැබැයි what we can do is we need to understand හරි per person from this total GDP how much do I earn? Right? That is identified as per capita income. The simplest example is Singapore, Iceland, right? These countries, Iceland, let's take Iceland. Iceland's GDP is pretty low to Sri Lanka. Iceland කියන රටේ GDP එක තමයි අපිත් එක්ක සාපේක්ෂව compare කරපුවම චුට්ටක් අඩුයි. කියන්නේ රට ගැන compare කරලා EU එක European රටක්. But what happens is when we calculate the per capita income, අපේ per capita income එක ගොඩක් අඩුයි because we have around 21 million population. But they only have around 4 lakhs population, around 5 lakhs, half a million වගේ ඉන්නේ. Right? So that is the benchmark you need to understand. Economic growth country එකක් weight කරන්නේ from the per capita income. Then the next argument comes, okay, what do you mean by median population? Right. Median population ගන්න කොහොමද? Right? Population at the beginning of the year minus plus population at the end of the year divide by 2. Right? මේක තමයි median population එක අපි හදන්නේ. Right? අවුරුද්දේ මුල ඉන්නේ population එක we divide it plus අවුරුද්දේ අන්තිමට තියෙන population එක and we divide by 2. This is called the median population. Right? Understood? How? Then the next part comes, right? මේ ඔක්කොම එකකට එකක් මේ interlink කරලා දිනා මේ ඔක්කොම පටන් ගන්න මෙතනින් තමයි. Development වෙනම it's a different area to discuss, right? Growth, GDP, then that is economic perspective, but we know GDP කරන් අපි compare කරන්න ගත්තම it's become subjective. Country එකේ ලොකු වෙන GDP කොහොමද වෙන්නේ? Because of that we use a dimension called per capita income. What do you mean by per capita income? Out of your total GDP, what is your per person income you achieve, right? That is called median population. Then median population identify කරගන්න මේක. Then the next case is, right, population, right? This will also grow, right? Population will also grow. Population growth, right? That population growth rate, right? How the population will grow. Population growth rate, right? Population growth rate equals, right? අපි එකට කියනවා natural growth rate plus net migration rate. Natural growth rate plus net migration rate. Right? Natural growth rate plus net migration rate. මේ දෙක එකතු කරපුවාම, right, you get the population growth rate, right? Population growth rate එක. මේක දැන් rate state එකක් තියෙන්නේ. මේ rate එක එකතු කරපුවාම what is total population growth එක. මේක දෙන numbers එක පොඩ්ඩක් බලන්න. මේක 1000 වලින් දෙනවද 100 වලින් දෙනවද? ඒක බලලා බෙදලා ගන්න. සමහරට net migration rate per 1000 කියලා දෙන්න පුළුවන්. Not 100 per 1000, right? ඒ වගේ දුන්නම පොඩ්ඩක් බලන්න මේක 10න් බෙදනවද මොකද කරන්න කියලා. But this is not a very deep discussion to have. Then natural growth rate. How a natural growth rate happens? Natural growth rate means what? Simple context. අපි දන්න විදියට, right? The adjustment you need to make with your what? With your birth rates and your death rates, right? So natural growth rate equals crude birth rate minus crude death rate, right? මිනිස්සු ඉපදෙන ගානෙන් අඩු කරනවා මිනිස්සු මැරෙන ගාන per year මේක rates, right? මේක rate වල. ඒතර තමයි natural growth rate එක එන්නේ. Net migration rate means what? Immigration, right, minus immigration. Sorry, immigration minus immigration, right? රට අස්සල යන කට්ටිය minus රටෙන් එළියට යන කට්ටිය, right? So immigration minus, right, migration. Natural net. How to find this? Immigration minus immigration, right? ඔන්න ඔක තමයි basic understanding you need to have. හරිද? So this is pretty much about one පළවෙනි bullet point එක, economic growth rate, the relationship with economic growth rate with other things, right? ඔළුවට දාගන්න ආයෙත් පාඩම් කරන්න තියාගන්න එපා මේක. ඉවරක් කළාම දාන්න, right? What? GDP Economic growth rate means what? When the GDP over the time GDP increase, it is economic growth rate. How to find it? This is the simplest equation for economic growth rate. Then there's something called development comes into play. Then people ask, okay, development is different from economic growth rate. What's the difference between development? Development is multidimensional, not only economical dimension like economic growth. Then multidimensional, it has few dimensions. One is economical perspective, one is education, one is health. When the economic dimension, right, people tendency ask, but when the GDP tendency to be increased when the country becomes big, and when there's more people, more GDP would come. Because of that, people tend to understand, look, here GDP is not a sole determination for the economical development also. They need have to go something called per capita income. Development එක measure කරන්නේ මොකෙන්ද ළමයි? Per capita income එකේ. Growth එක measure කරන්නේ මොකෙන්ද? Economic growth rate එකෙන්. Right? Economic growth එක measure කරන්නේ මොකෙන්ද? Economic growth rate එකෙන්. Development එක measure කරන්නේ from where? From the per capita income එකෙන්. How to find per capita income? That is the total GDP divided by the median population. Then median population is what? The population at the beginning of the year plus population at the end of the year divided by 2. Then the other hand side, median population. How the population comes? Because population is also growing. Population growth rate means what? Natural growth rate plus the net migration rate. Natural growth rate කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? මිනිස්සු මැරෙන ඉපදෙන ගාන. ඒකට ඇඩ් වෙනවා මිනිස්සු යන එන ගාන. From foreign මේ දවස්වල ඔයාලා දැකලා ඇති ගොඩක් කට්ටිය රටින් පිටට යනවා නේද? මේ country හරිය නෑ කියලා. So what happens? Population growth rate might becomes negative. යන කට්ටිය වැඩි වුණොත් එන කට්ටියට වඩා it might become negative, right? So this is the first and foremost thing that you need to understand what we need to discuss. Making him of employment derive karamu so that it will make our life much easier to understand. Anyone won't have step make a sample mama make I'm going to have it employment. Right? So, then population, right? So everything starts now with the discussion of population. So we know for a fact what population includes, who are the people who live in the country, right? And from there, migration part adjust karna here and there so that we get the population. But the difference is what? In economics, we know population is a very vague discussion, right? හරිම ලොකු එකක්. අපි ඒක ඇත්තටම කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඇයි ඒක ගැන කතා කරලා වැඩකුත් නැහැ. Because the point is as a determinant, right? Economic growth එක හරි මොකක් හරි දෙයක් ගැන check කරන determinant එක ගැන focus කරපුවාම population එකට වඩා we have other variables that we can look into. අපි macroeconomics වලදී population කියන එකට ලොකු weight එකක් දෙන්නේ නැහැ. Because the real weight need to be close to the place what we call as the labor force. Right? Labor force එක තමයි අපිට බලන්නේ. Why we are a nation with economic activities. We need people who can be actively participant in the economy. Economic actively participant කරන කට්ටිය තමයි ඕනේ. ඉතින් ඒක identify කරගන්න, right? We need to understand what who are the people who can work, right? කාටද මේක ඇත්තටම economic එකේ වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. මොකද හැමෝටම අපි දන්නවා economic එකේ වැඩ කරන්න බෑ. So first thing is we need to understand what is labor force. මෙන්න මේක තමයි මතක තියාගන්න. මේක frequent exam එකේදී අහනවා and everyone get it missed. මේක miss කරගන්න එපා. මේක කොහොමද population එක කොහොමද අපි labor force කරන්න කියලා now let's discuss. හරි. I need a support on this also. Let's start with population. So in a country we do have the population. අපි දන්නවා හැම country එකකම population එකක් තියෙනවා. Right? But we know labor force, pretty much the labor force what we discussed, right? අපි labor force කියන කතා කරන එක ඇත්තටම population වලට slightly differ, right? Population එකම නෙමෙයි workforce එක වෙන්නේ. හරි. දැන් කියන්නේ we need to add and deduct things. Minus කරන්න ඕනේ දේවල් ටික. Population එකෙන් මොනව අඩු කරපුවාමද we get the labor force. කියන්න බලන්න. Yes. මට කියන්න. What do we need to deduct? Right? Population එකෙන් කාවදක අයින් කරන්න. කාව අයින් කරපුවාමද we get the people who can really work. Yes. First thing is we need to remove whoever the people below the age of hari. මේක තමයි ඊළඟ crucial එක where most of the people get it wrong. අපි age limit එක කීයද දාන්නේ? Age limit එක 10ද 15ද 16ද 18ද? Right? We know in the entire population සම්පූර්ණ population එකෙන් අපි දන්නවා set එකක් ඉන්නවා පොඩි set එකක්. අපි මේක කියන dependence එක. Right? Depend වෙනවා. එයාලා earn කරන්නත් බෑ. මොකද අපි දන්නවා labor force means what? අපි මේකට අනිත් එක කියනවා economically active population. Both the same. Economically active population. Right? මෙයාලා නම් actively වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතර මේක අස්සේ ඉන්න dependent set එකක්. පොඩි ළමයි, right? ඒ වගේ කටියට වැඩ කරන්න බෑ. එතකොට first set is what the people who are below the age of මට කියන්න what is the right answer? Age of below the age of 10, 12, 15, 16 and 18. කියන්න බලන්න. අපි කාවද ගන්නෙ? මේකෙන් පල්ලෙහා ඉන්න කාවත් ගන්නෙ නැහැ. Below the age of what? ලංකාවේ labor force එක calculate කරන්න අපි කී දෙනෙක්වද ගන්නෙ? Yes. Good, right? It is what? It is 15. ලංකාවේ 15ට අඩුවෙන් ඉන්න කට්ටියද මේක හැම ඉස්සර මේක start කරේ 10න් නමයි. ඊට පස්සේ දන්නවනේ ඉතින් ලංකාවේ ඒක හිමිදිමේ වෙනස් වෙනවා. Now it's 15. So 15 වලින් පල්ලෙහා අපි කාවත් ගන්නෙ නැහැ. Right? මේක අපි කියන dependence එක. Right? මේ below the age of 15. තව set එකක් ඉන්නවා කවුද? Right? තවත් කට්ටියක් ඉන්නවා අපි අඩු කරනවා. අනිත් එක තමයි people who are above the age of කීයද? කීයෙන් උඩ කට්ටියද අපි ආයෙ ගන්න. මොකද යාළුවා dependence ලා. යාළුවාත් අපි economically active කට්ටිය කියලා ගන්න. යාළුවාත් වැඩ කරන්න බෑ. අපිට ගොඩක් අය retire වෙන pension වෙන age එකේ ඉන්න කට්ටිය. මට කියන්න බලන්න. ඒ කට්ටිය කියන්න. 55 60 65. Yes. කවදද ගන්න මේක? Above the age of 55, 60, 65. කියන්න බලන්න කීයද ගන්නෙ? retirement age එක කීයද? retirement age එක කීයද ලංකාවේ? So මේ හරිම tricky. හරිම tricky, right? So මේක ඔයාලගේ exam එකේදී පොඩ්ඩක් එහාට මෙහාට වෙයි, right? So මතක තියාගන්න generally according to the statistics and according to the things that we take, it has age of 60. Right? 60න් උඩ සමහර අය කියන මේක 65න් උඩ කියන සමහර අය කියන මේක 60න් උඩ කියලා, right? So in your exam, right, ideally they won't ask you the age limit, right, but they would give you a number, right? You can make හදනවා නම් calculate කරනවා නම් calculate කරන්න දෙනවා variables, right? එතකොට 15න් අඩු කට්ටිය 60න් උඩ කට්ටිය 65න් උඩ කට්ටිය කියලා දෙන්න පුළුවන්, නැත්නම් 60න් උඩ කට්ටිය කියලා දෙන්න පුළුවන්. So either this is what you need to understand, right? එක්ක 60 නැත්නම් 65 exam එකේ දෙන එක බලන්න. ගොඩක් කාට 60, right? It's 60, not 65, 60. It's 60, pretty much 60. එතකොට 60 වලින් උඩ ඉන්න කට්ටියව අපි ගන්නෙත් නෑ. එයාලා ඔක්කොම අපි කියනවා මේ සෙට් එකටම මේ දෙගොල්ලන්ටම අපි කියන මොනවා කියලාද? ඩිපෙන්ඩන්ස් කියලා. Right? මෙයාලා අපි කියන dependence based on your age. Dependence based on age. වයසත් එක්ක තමයි මෙයාලා dependence එක determine වෙන්නේ. හරි? But this is not completely finished from here. මේක මෙතනින් ඉවර වෙන්නේ නැහැ. Then there is another set of people, right? There is another crew of people, right? Right? මෙයාලට තමයි වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන්. හරිද? මෙයාලා තමයි අපි කියන මේක මෙයාලා තමයි generally the people who can really work. හරිද? These people can really work in the country, right? මෙයාලා තමයි හරනම් අපි කියනවා active කට්ටිය. මේ කට්ටිය තමයි වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන්, right? එතකොට මේක කරපුවම you get a number. But right, there are people, right? There are people who are not really, right? Who are not really can go to work, right? Set එකක් ඉන්නවා මේක අසෙත් ඉන්නවා තව set එකක් who would not really work again. කවුද? There are, right, full-time students. Simple example, like you guys, all are 15ට වඩා වැඩි. හැබැයි you are a full-time student. If you go into state uni, you would be a full-time student until 22, 23 when you are a full-time student. So they can't really work in the economy, right? There are people who say, right, who would identified as what? Housewives. If you can remember in the national accounting, when you calculate GDP, GDP calculate කරද්දී housewife service එක ගත්තද GDP එකට? Housewife service එක ගත්තේ නැහැ GDP එකට. එයාලා cook කරනේවා, ළමයි බලා ගන්නේවා, ගේ අතු ගන්නේවා, කලවොෂ් කරනේවා. We didn't took them. So එයාලම අපි ගත්තේ නැත්තම්, එයාලගේ service එක අපි ගත්තේ නැත්තම්, we can't take them also into labor force as the economically active people. ඒ වැඩ කරන people කිව්වද ගන්න බෑ. ඇයි අපි එයාලගේ contribution එක GDP කරගන්නේ නැහැ. Next is there are people who say we are self-unemployed. A very nice word, self-unemployed. Sometimes this might be full-time disabled people. Lifetime disabled people. You can different label, they might not can't be going to work. Or else they can be people who say, "Mama job back when mara Lanka job kala hariyanne මම ඒක හිනා කකා බිබි ගෙදරලා ඉන්නවා මම ජොබ් එකක් කරන්නේ නැහැ." right? නැත්නම් මැනිකර් ඔක්කොම කරගෙන මම ළමයි බලන් ඉන්නවා ඔයා කියලා earn කරන්නේ. So that is self unemployed people. මෙයාලා unemployed වෙලා තියන්නේ ඇයි? එයාලගේම decision එකක් ඉන්න, discretion එකක් ඉන්න. මේ ටික කමෙන්ට් කරපුවාම we get the remaining stuff and we call this as the labor force. මේකට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ labor force එක කියලා. හරිද? මේක හොඳ ළමයි ටික වගේ මතක තියාගන්න. මොකද එක්සෑම් එකේදී මෙන්න මේක චුට්ටක් එහාට මෙහාට කරකවලා අවුල් කරලා පොඩ්ඩක් දන්නද පොඩ්ඩක් ටෙක්නිකලි වැඩ කරලා ගන්නවා, right? So this is your labor force. This is your working age population. Some people call this one as the active population also. Not economically active, but active population. Huh? But this is your what you need to understand as your labor force. හරිද? working age population එකකින් වැඩ කරන කට්ටිය. So generally, right, labor force, right? So මේ labor force එක තමයි ළමයි එක්කෝ either they are full-time employed or else they are unemployed. මේ labor force එක තමයි එක්කෝ employed වෙන්නේ නැත්නම් unemployed වෙන්නේ. Right? එක්කෝ මෙයාලා තමයි. කවදාවත් unemployed or employed doesn't come from here. It come from out of your labor force. So මේ කට්ටිය එකතු කරපුවම තමයි අපි කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? labor force එක කියලා. Then we have another nice equation that is called what? අපි මේ දෙක ගැන පොඩ්ඩක් study කරමු. That is called labor force participation rate. අපේ ඉන්න labor force එක, right? අපේ ඉන්න total working age population එකෙන් කී දෙනෙක් අතරම labor force එකේ ඉන්නවද? ඇත්තටම කී දෙනෙක් labor force participate කරලා ඉන්නවද? Right? I can අපේ මේ chunk එක වැඩිද? Right? So how to find it? Labor force participation rate equals, right? Labor force divided by working age population සමහර වෙලාවද exam එකේදී working age population එක දෙන්නේ නැහැ, but sometimes they give you the total population. එහෙම આવොත් total population එකෙන් හදන්න ඕන. ඒ කියන්නේ assumption එකක් දානවා මේ දෙක සමානයි කියලා. Right? ඒක exam එකේදී එන විදිය බලන්න, right? But generally it means what? Your labor force out of your working age population. This is called the labor force participation rate. Right? මේ පොඩි equations ටිකක් මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ parts ටික. හරි. ඔක තමයි එක part එකකින් එන්නේ. ඊළඟ part එකකින් එන එක තමයි මේ employment case එක and unemployment rate එක. Right? Employment rate and unemployment rate. Right? So employment rate and unemployment rate මතක තියාගන්න, it doesn't be calculated from your population. මම කියවා economically අපි population කියන එක ගැන ආයෙ ලොකුට කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. Because ඒක very dependent. අපි එකට කියනවා අපි මම ඉස්සරහ කතා කරන්න මේ development ගැන අපි කතා කරද්දී, because this part of the equation and this part of the equation play a very critical role. Right? ළමයි අපි economy එක ගත්තොත් ලංකාව, ශ්‍රී ලංකාව. Right? And we take an economy like Japan. In the Japanese economy, right, you won't believe this chunk is very huge. यानी population එක calculate කරපුවම සම්පූර්ණ population එකේ මේ part එක පට්ට ලොකුයි. Why? ඔයාලා දන්නවා Japanese මිනිස්සු මැරෙන්නේ නැහැ අවුරුදු 100, 110, 120 they live because their medical and everything and their health and their hygiene and their nutrition levels are in different state. Because of that මිනිස්සු මැරෙන්නේ නැහැ. එතකොට what happens? මෙන්න මේ part එක ලොකු වෙනවා. Then labor force එක හරිය අඩු වෙනවා. Right? Then their contribution to economy have to be much higher. අපි කියන dependency එක වැඩි economy එකේ. ලංකාව එච්චර එහෙම නැහැ. Right? හැබැයි there are economies like simple like countries like Bangladesh. Right? ඒ country වල මේක අඩුයි. Right? මේක ගොඩක් අඩුයි. ඒ ගොඩක් young. එතකොට ඒ country ඉක්මනට develop වෙනවා. දැන් if you take Sri Lanka and Bangladesh in the COVID time also, you can see Bangladesh have the highest growth rate. Why? එයාලගේ මේ chunk එක controlling a lot. Labor force participation rate එක high in compared to Sri Lanka. ඒතර ගොඩක් අය වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? ඒතර අපි ජපාන් එක ගත්තොත් ඊටත් වඩා මේ කට්ටියක වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් අර ඒක හින්දායි අපි population කියන එක ළමයි අපි වැඩි consider කරන්නේ නෑ දැන්. Economically, we consider heavily on labor force and the working age population. So because of that, unemployed party, here we can find unemployment rate. Unemployment rate. How to find the unemployment rate? Right? Yes, unemployed population divide by, we divide it by the labor force. We are looking up name into 100. Right? employed එක හොයන කවුද employment rate එක employment rate එක equals employed population divided by labor force into 100 hari neda this is pretty much on your employment and unemployment. Then again, right, talking little slightly on unemployment, I hope you can see this. Unemployment also can come in four main ways. Right? Unemployment so jati hatarak තියෙනවා. මේකත් exam එකේදී ටිකක් මතක තියාගන්න මොනවද unemployment jati හතර කියලා. They might test you here and there. First type is called the frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment. The next one is called the structural unemployment. Right. Then we have something called seasonal unemployment. And then we have something called cyclical unemployment. One more examples ring explain කරන්න හොඳට දාගන්න. හරිද? මේ note එක ලියන්න නැති හින්දා මෙතන. මොකද්ද මේ කියන්නේ කියලා. Frictional unemployment එකක් කියන්නේ what do you mean by friction? Friction. ගට්ටනය. Right? පොඩි friction එකක් තියෙනවා. Why a frictional unemployment comes? Frictional unemployment comes maybe due to a societal friction you get. Look at the example, like a simple example, like a frictional unemployment means maybe the time gap, right, between two jobs. What job again resignation leave any job එකට යනවා. යද්දි මොකද වෙන්නේ? යාලා කියනවා නෑ නෑ මට දැම්ම ගන්න බෑ. සති දෙකක් ඉන්න ගෙදරට වෙලා. Right? That's our term starts. So what happens? That time you become unemployed. But ඒක ගොඩක් කල් තියෙන unemployment එකද නෑ. It's a frictional unemployment. දැන් ඔයාලා A levels ඉවරච්ච ගමන් job back වෙනවා කියන්නකෝ. Right? Then you don't get a job. ගෙදර ගිය ගමන් A levels කරලා ගෙදර ගිය ගමන් පහුවෙන්ද job back හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ. You might have to wait until the right time. That is frictional unemployment. Assume that you are a graduate, right? As you are a graduate also, when you start working, there is a little gap. Interviews දානවා, jobs interviews යනවා, resumes දානවා, හැමතැනම දැම්මම you take a bit of time. That is called the frictional unemployment. ඒක long lasting ද නැහැ. ඒක පොඩි friction එකක්. Societal friction එකක්, economical friction එකක් එන්නේ හරිම limited time. That is frictional unemployment. Then you have something called structural unemployment. Structural unemployment means what? The unemployment which occur due to the structural change of the economy. Maybe a technological development. Simple example, the transition we had from typewriters to computers. Isra godak demand එක තිබ්බ job එකක් තමයි මොකද්ද? Typewriter. Typewriter is like a specialist la. Typewriter specialist. Tick tick gala you place like that. But when the computer took over, what happens? They lose their jobs. Then because the economical structure changed. That's one example. Another example, we can economically drastically change agricultural to manufacturing. So what happens? Agricultural people who are expert on agriculture might lose their jobs because if the economy is moving into manufacturing, and service sector. Jobs. That's a structural move that happens in the economy. Right? Right? Natural rate of unemployment. Exam what do you mean by natural rate of unemployment? Natural rate of unemployment frictional unemployment structural generally economy you will have natural rate of unemployment. Exam can the unemployment become zero? Unemployment unemployment theoretically because there is something called what? Natural rate of unemployment in every economy. Natural rate of unemployment. That is embedded. Look, frictional and structural. Make it control. But there are two other types of unemployment which are seasonal and cyclical. Seasonal unemployment එකක් කියන ළමයි හිතන්න දැන් මේ දවස්වල Christmas season and New Year comes, right? දැන් මේ වගේ වෙලාවලදී ගොඩක් shops වල ගොඩක් අපි දන්නවනේ මොකද්ද නොලිමිට් මේ තියෙන එකේක ඕඩේ එල්ල නම්බරනම් ඇඳුම් කඩවල තියෙන, right? So during these times what happens for them, there is a huge footfall coming into play. ගොඩක් මිනිස්සු වෙනවා. ඒකින්ද for this time they hire, right? They hire temporary people to work in their businesses. The simple example, the place where I do full-time work also, අපේ campaigns ළඟදී අපි interns ලා hire කරනවා very short time, මාස දෙකයි තුනයි. After that happens, campaigning ඉවරෙච්ච ගමන්, season ඉවරෙච්ච ගමන් we let them go. That is seasonal. So what happens? ඔයාලා Christmas season එකේ වැඩ කරනවා, ඊට පස්සේ Christmas season එක ඉවරෙච්ච ගමන් you lose your job. Then again you get a job again on the April New Year. You lose your job. අර ඒ වගේ there is a season comes. මේක තමයි season එකක්. Economical season එකක්. Economical නෙමෙයි මේක මේ season එකක්. කියන්නේ මේකේ වෙන seasons. Christmas අනම්මනම් ඒ වගේ season එකකට you get unemployed. කාලයෙන් කාලයට unemployed වෙනා මිනිස්සු. හරිද? දැන් ඔයාලා full time job back කරන කෙනෙක්ට කියන්නේ company job back කරන කෙනෙක්ට මේක එච්චර තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. But හැම වෙලෙම හිතන්න අර labor කෙනෙක් ගැන per day work කරන කෙනෙක් ගැන බලන්න. They will have seasonal and unemployments. The last one is called the cyclical unemployments. ගොඩක් අය පටල ගන්නවා seasonal එකයි cyclical එකයි. The difference is cyclical means the business cycle unemployment. Right? The unemployment which occur due to the business cycle change of economy. Economic recession වෙද්දී මොකද වෙන්නේ ළමයි? මේ මොන දේ වෙලත් මිනිස්සුන්ගේ jobs නැති වෙනවා. That is called the cyclical unemployment. දැන් මේ දවස්වල right COVID එක hit වුණා මොකද උනේ? Economy drowned into an recession. What happens? People were laid off, terminated. That is what? That is called cyclical unemployment. Why it happens? Due to the cyclical business cycle movements in the economy. ඕක තමයි මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ. මේ තමයි අපේ economic එකේ තියෙන unemployments ಜಾති 4. හරි නේද? හරි. මේකට අමතරව what you need to understand is what are the pros and cons of unemployment blah blah blah. But මේක අස්සේ තව පොඩි part එකක් තියෙනවා මම ඒකත් මෙතනම ලියන්නම්. That is unemployment. Right? Unemployed, right? ඇත්තම කිව්වොත් they are not unemployed, they are employed. Right? They are employed but underemployed. Right? But underemployed. මේකත් මතක තියාගන්න unemployed කියලා concept එකකුත් තියෙනවා ළමයි. Unemployment කට්ටිය ඉන්නේ employment එක අස්සේ. Because how to find employed or not? එහලා statistical කට්ටිය ඇවිල්ලා ආයෙ ගන්නවා for the past week ඔයා සල්ලි earn කරන මොකක් හරි දෙයක් කරාද? ඔයාට සල්ලි හම්බෙනවා monetary value එකක් earn කරන මොකක් හරි economical activity එකක engage වුණාද? එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? එතකොට everyone becomes employed නේ. That's how the employment rate calculate. ලංකාව employment rate එක අඩු එකයි. unemployment rate එක අඩු එකයි. මොකද සතියක් ගණනක් තියෙන ඕනම කෙනෙක් මොනාද කරනවා නේ ලංකාවේ නැත්තම් ඉන්න බෑනේ. They do something, try to identify that employment part. හැබැයි what you mean by unemployed is where you might not do a job which satisfy or which suits your qualifications and experiences. ඒ කියන්නේ හිතන්නකෝ you are a graduate company එක graduate කෙනෙක් sorry මේ university එකෙන් pass out වෙච්ච graduate කෙනෙක්. Graduate කෙනෙක් වෙලා හිතන්න if you work as a janitor in a company. right මම මේ කිසිම position එකක් downgrade කරනවා නෙමෙයි. but graduate කෙනෙක් right maybe an accountant කෙනෙක් company එක නිකන් හිතන්නකෝ janitor කෙනෙක් විදියට. එහෙම නැත්නම් driver කෙනෙක් විදියට right. ඒ වගේ work කරනවා you are employed but we identify it as what underemployed because you can work much better than that job at a place where you are good at and you can earn a higher salary also. So those kind of things are identified as underemployed scenarios, not unemployed but underemployed. Disguise unemployment hormone path එකක් තියෙනවා ඒව ඉච්චර important නෑ. හරි නේද? මේක snap කරගන්න. This is one of the key parts which is labor force and population amalgamation with unemployment rates. හරි හරි නේද හරි හරි now we are going to discuss very another crucial topic which is poverty මේකත් frequent exam එකේ test කරනවා ගොඩක් අය මේක චුට්ටක් අවුල් කර ගන්නවා that is one is poverty අනිත් එක තමයි equity and equality මේ දෙක hand in hand goes hand in hand poverty and inequity නැත්නම් equality අපි ඒකත් කතා කරමු but poverty we are going to focus on poverty හරි poverty in simple context you know what you mean by poverty if a person can't at least fulfill their basic requirements we call them as people who are in the poverty scenario right හැම කෙනෙක්ගෙම තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නයක් so poverty when you discuss about poverty in terms of definition poverty right Robert Chambers identified what 5 aspects right 5 aspects of poverty by Robert Chambers right poverty ඉන්න පුළුවන් විදි පහක් right පළවෙනි එක first one is income poverty මේක තමයි අපි ලොකුටම කතා කරන්නේ right where you lack income so that you can fulfill your basic needs next one is physical poverties maybe damages to your physical body or else you don't own any resources something like that right physical poverty then you have vulnerabilities right fourth is lack of social contacts and last one is powerlessness right so what Robert Chambers identified මේ ಜಾති පහෙම ඔයාට මොකක් හරි deprivation එකක් තියෙනවා මොකක් හරි මදි නම් we call it as what you are a person in the poverty right poverty කියලා තමයි කියන්නේ හැබැයි in economics we pretty much focus really on the income poverty part right wage income perspective එක තමයි අපි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට බලන්නේ right so when we talk on income poverty specifically what we need to understand is poverty it can be either any of these මේ ඔක්කොම ගැන කතා කරන්නේ poverty it can be absolute poverty or else it can be relative poverty right so මේ දෙක දෙකක් right මේක නිකන් පොඩක් scarcity concept එක වගේ එකක් what do you mean by absolute poverty right අපි නැත්තම් මේකට කියන අපේ simple income poverty right income poverty කියන්නේ absolute poverty එකට තමයි income poverty what this means is simply which help you to understand whether you are capable of meeting your basic requirements ඔයාට තියෙන basic requirements එක ඔයාට meet කරන්න ඔයාට fulfill කරගන්න ඔයාට පුළුවන් ද බැරිද කියන එක. That is identified what ඔයාගේ income එකෙන් ඔයාට පුළුවන් ද බැරිද from your income whether you can at least fulfill your basic necessities. අපි කියන්නේ අර basic requirements එක කන්න බොන්න ජීවත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් ද කියන එක. Relative poverty means whether you are powered or else whether you are below a certain area or whether you are below a certain line which compared to another person. Simple context. මේ දවස්වල කතා වෙන මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ තිරුපති right තිරුපති pilgrimage through a private jet. දැන් එයත් එක්ක compare කරපුවම අපි ඔක්කොම poverty. That is simple understanding. මේ simplest understanding එක what do you mean by relative poverty? Relative poverty කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? ඔයා වෙන කෙනෙක් එක්ක නැත්නම් එක්කෙනෙක් එක්ක කතා කරපුවම compare කරපුවම you become poverty. ඇත්තටම we might not be in the poverty in terms of absolute numbers. But in compared to Mahinda Rajapaksa, in compared to Warren Buffett, in compared to Elon Musk, Dhammika Pereira, we might be relative poverty also. So someone asks you, poverty කියන එක අයින් කරන්න පොන්ද ලෝකේ? Poverty කියන එක අයින් කරන්න බෑ. Hey, everyone would come under relative poverty. But we can eliminate absolute poverty. So the entire world is hunting behind to eliminate what? Absolute poverty, not relative poverty. මේ getting අයින් කරන්න හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ. So relative poverty කියන එක තමයි ළමයි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට මේ inequality එකට මේන්ම course එක. Right? Inequality course, inequality එන්නේ මොකද වෙන්නේ? Relative poverty becomes high. එතන හැමෝම එකම එකක් earn කරනවනේ. Then there is no inequality. හරිද? එහෙනම් there is no relative poverty also. හැබැයි relative poverty එන්නේ due to inequality. Inequity නෙමෙයි inequality. හරිද? අපි එකක් ගැන කතා කරමු. හරි. So talking on poverty, specifically income poverty or as absolute poverty, right? This part that you need to be measured. Right? Make a way to measure. Right? Check around countries, right? To measure this, we use certain dimensions and certain metrics. Right? We call it as the poverty line. First one we identify as the poverty line. First is what? Poverty line. Poverty line. Then we have something called poverty head count index. Poverty head count index. And the last one is called a poverty gap. Right? Poverty gap. The next one is poverty gap, right? Then we have one last one. That is multidimensional poverty index. Right? ඔන්න ඔය ටික තමයි ළමයි තියෙන්නේ basically, right? මේක ඇත්තටම මේ දෙක තමයි ගොඩක්ම exam එකේදී frequently අහන දෙක. Poverty line and poverty head count index එක. හරිද? Poverty line. Poverty line ගැන කතා කරද්දී ළමයි poverty line means simply අපට graphical norm එකක් ගන්නොත් if this is your total, right? If this is your median average, right? Average per day income. Right? Average per day income. Per day income, right? And this is your time. Poverty line means, right? The line which determines, right? The line which determines which you need to have minimum. This is a minimum. Minimum requirement, right, to fulfill your basic needs. Minimum requirement to fulfill your basic needs. This is called the poverty line. Poverty line. Poverty line right? Line. This is average daily income. Starting with $1,000, $2,000, $5,000. Right? Level minimum. How much do you need to have so that you could at least fulfill your basic needs? That is called poverty line. So poverty line, we have what? We have the national poverty line and we have the international poverty lines. We have the national and international ones. Right? Again, world UNESCO, UNA, right? United Nations again. World Food Program making where international poverty line. And right, we have what? We have national poverty lines also. National poverty lines basically vary, right? Focusing on right food consumption poverties and non-food consumption poverty. Food consumption and not food consumption. Again, rupee value dollar value based on your income. As a country, we are going to determine per day කොච්චරක් කන්න ඕනේද? අපි කියන calories කොච්චරක් consume කරන්න ඕනේද? අපිට ඒ මාක් එකකුත් තියෙනවා ළමයි. ඒක තමයි මේ food consumption and non-food consumption poverty line එක කියන්නේ. අපි දවසකට කොච්චරක් calories consume කරන්න ඕනේද? දවසකට අපි essential දේවල් කොච්චරක් consume කරන්න ඕනේද? Right? ඒකට තමයි අපි national poverty line එක කියන්නේ. හැබැයි we basically have pretty much the international poverty line. Right? Per day, you need to earn. Right? Per day, this you need to earn. That is called international poverty line, which is you need to be clear cut known at your level. Poverty line how much in terms of dollar? Dollars poverty line yes. ලංකාවේ අපි දැන් අපි කතා කරන poverty line එක කීයද? ඒකට මම ගණන් දෙන්නම් ඔයාලට ඩොලර්ස් වලින් $1, $1.25, $1.9, $2. poverty line එක කීයද? yes. ලංකාවේ දැනට අපි use කරන poverty line එක කීයද? Yes, anyone? Initially, right, it was determined as what? 1.25. Initial poverty line, right? 1.25. Has increased up to $1.9. Right? This was the initial, but this is after 2016. This is your poverty line. Right? So it is $1.9. $1.9. 25 වලින් තමයි වැඩි පටන් ගත්තේ ඉස්සර. right? ඒතර පරණ සිලබස් එක මම ඉගෙන ගන්න කාලේ 25 තමයි තිබ්බේ අපිට. දැන් මේක 1.9. Because after 2016 World Bank changed it to 1.9. හරි මේක තමයි poverty line එකේ කතාව. Then we have poverty head count index. ඔන්න ආයෙ කතාවක්. It's about head counts, right? Poverty head count index means, right? Now you have a calculation in here. Now you have poverty line in here, right? People. Now we identify, right? Then make us say how many people are there. Right? We identify how many population under the poverty line. Right? We take this as a percentage of the total mid-tier population. Into 100. This is identified as what? Poverty head count index. Olu gedi kiyak tiyenawada මේක ASCII. and මේක ASCII olu gedi kiyak tiyenawada. right මේකට තමයි poverty head count index එක කියන්නේ. right poverty head count index means poverty line එකෙන් බලලා කොච්චර ඔලුවට ගොඩු ගෙඩි ටිකක් තියෙනවද head count එක කීයද. that is poverty head count index. හරිද? හරි. next is poverty gap index. හරි poverty gap index. poverty gap index එක කියන්නේ ඒකත් pretty much something like this. ආයත දැනුනොත් average income you have and you have your poverty line. right? අපි දැන් බලනවා අපේ දැන් අපේ total කට්ටිය right අපේ දැන් අපේ ගන්න population එකත් එක්ක අපේ ගන්න කට්ටියත් එක්ක හරි අපි බලනවා හිතන්න simple context දැන් අපේ total income එකේ ඉන්නවනේ කීයක් හරි earn කරන කට්ටිය right අපි බලනවා what is the gap right මට හිතන්න අපේ දැන් ඇත්තටම ඔයාගේ income level එක ඔයා poverty ඉන්න මිනිස්සෙක් poverty ඉන්න කෙනෙක් ඔයාගේ income level එක මෙන්න මේ හරියට තියෙනවා. this is your what actual earning. මේක තමයි ඔයාගේ actual earning එක. poverty line එක තියෙනවා actual earning එක. මෙන්න මේ gap එකට තමයි කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? poverty gap එක කියලා. right so make එක්කෙනාගේ වෙනස actual income of person 1 then actual income of person 2 ටිකක් වෙන දිහාවක මෙතන ලියලා බලන්න actual income of 2 right එක levels වල එනවා ළමයි හරිද එක levels වල it comes so what we do is right poverty gap index එකක් හදන්න right you take all the additions right you take the total sum right total sum of these poverty gaps. And you divide it by your mid-tier population. Into 100, right? සමහර අය මේක පොඩ්ඩක් slightly වෙනස් කරනවා මේක අසල දානවා මේ මොකද්ද මේ sorry ආයෙ මේක බෙදනවා right from the poverty line. මෙතන තමයි index එක එන්නේ. right total gaps ටික එකතු කරනවා from the median population and then you divide it again by poverty line to get the poverty line index poverty gap index එකක් ගන්න මේකෙන් බෙදලා ගන්නවා හරිද so this is poverty gaps generally poverty gap is 0 poverty gap is 0 for a non-poor person. ඒක මම අපිට මෙයා ගන්න. හරිද? ඒක additional part එකක් මතක තියාගන්න. poverty gap එක හැම වෙලෙම බිඳුවයි. right? poverty gap එක හැම වෙලෙම බිඳුවයි for a non poor person. poor කෙනෙක් නෙමෙයි නේද? ඒ කියන්නේ මේ line එකෙන් උඩ ඉන්නවා නම් ඔයාලට poverty gap එකක් එන්නේ නැහැ කවදාවත්. right? You don't get a poverty gap. poverty gap එකක් එන්නේ මේකේ පල්ලෙහා ඉන්න කට්ටියට විතරයි. That is poverty gap index. So the next one is multidimensional poverty index, right? මේක චුට්ටක් technical but එකතර කතා කරමු. We calculate this using, right, poverty head count index multiplied by the deprivation index. Can you see it? No, not depreciation, deprivation. Again, what a deprivation index. Right? Make a very good one, you get multidimensional poverty index. Deprivation index, right? It checks, right, how much you have been suffering in economically, how much you have been suffering from health perspective, and how much you suffer from your educational perspective. එහෙම තමයි deprivation index එක හදන්නේ. ඒක ටිකක් deep එකක් deprivation index එක වෙනම හදන්න ඕන. ඒක හදලා තමයි ඔයා මේකත් එක්ක වැඩි කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒකින්ද ඔයාලගේ level එකේදී you don't be getting that much of things from here, but you would get so much of things from here and here in terms of poverty. හරිද? මතක තියාගන්න, it all starts from poverty. poverty කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියන එක? 5 aspects of poverty. Poverty කියන එක might be different terms and different norms. Income, physical vulnerabilities, lack of social contacts is also poverty, and powerlessness. You don't have anything, you can't do anything. Right? The mind rather past part presidency එකෙන් අයින් වුණ කාලේ ආට fee became poverty because powerless එකකට power ගන්න වෙනවා. Right? Then poverty can again be what? Absolute and relative. Everyone becomes relative poverty due to income inequalities. However, absolute poverty is what everyone is looking at, because it is a problem for the economy and problem for the world, and we are trying to eliminate this. මේකට අපි කියන්නේ මොකද? income poverty කියලා කියන්නේ ඒකමයි. අපි කොහොමද මේක measure කරන්නේ? different metrics are there. First one is poverty line, poverty head count index, poverty gap index, and multidimensional poverty index. Poverty line කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? You have a certain income level that you need to earn per day or else per month, at least to fulfill and to at least to satisfy your basic requirements. Right? A line එකට තමයි කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? poverty line එක කියලා. මේක we identify in national level and in international levels. National level කියන්නේ අරකම තමයි ඩොලර් වලට මාරු රුපීස් වලට මාරු කරගන්න, but meantime we look at the food consumption patterns and non-food consumption expenditures of an economy of an usual person. Food consumption කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? ඔයා minimum ගන්න ඕන කැලරි ගාන කීයද? Non-food consumption කියන්නේ කොහොමද? ඔයා basic requirements වලට අනිවාර්යෙන්ම වියදම් කරන්න ඕනේ ගාන කීයද? හැබැයි food නෙමෙයි අනිත් ඒවා transport වලට පුළුවන්, shelter වලට වෙන්න පුළුවන්, something like that. Then we have the international poverty line. It is right now it's $1.990, but initially it starts at 1.25. But World Bank announced it and reassessed it as 1.9 in 2016. Partner syllabus 1.25. Then we have something called poverty head count index. බලනවා කොච්චර head count එකක් ඉන්නවද මේ poverty line එක යට. Right? How many people are under the poverty line? You divide it by your median population to get an index. Then you identify the poverty gap index. Poverty gap figure. This is called the gap. The actual income you earn as a poor person and the poverty line. What you do is you find an index. How to find that index? ඔක්කොම poverty lines එකතු කරලා බෙදනවාගේ median population එකෙන් අතුරාගෙන poverty gap index poverty gap එක එනවා. ඔයාගේ index එකක් කරනවා from your poverty line. Then into 100. Poverty gap is always 0 for a non-poor person. මේ non-poor කියන්නේ මොකද? Absolute poverty එක බිඳුව. Right? Absolute poverty නැත්නම් non-poor. Then you have the multidimensional index, which is poverty head count index multiplied by the deprivation index. which is little advanced. And how to find deprivation index? It look at your 3 dimensions of economical deprivations, health deprivations, and education deprivations, and it gives certain weightages, and ඊට පස්සේ තමයි ඔක හදන්නේ. හරිද? This is poverty. හරි. මේකත් ඕන ස්ටෙප් එකක් දාගන්න, නෝට් එකක් දාගන්න, so that we can jump into the last and most important part, which is inequality. Right? Let's talk about inequality. Hurry. So the next part is, as I mentioned, relative poverty comes basically due to this entire context of inequality, right? So there's 2 different words in economics, which is inequality and inequity. Right? 2 different words, inequality and inequity, right? Or as equality and inequality. Equality, one simple term again, equality means, right? You have 10 people, right? And these 10 people each need to get, right, $10 per day. This is equality, right? Inequality means this is unequal. If this is not happening, then this is unequal, right? This is equality. But in economics, we say this is not ideally what do we really want in an economy, right? Inequality is a problem. The real problem is inequity. What do you mean by inequity, right? Or as equity means we have 10 people, but these 10 people might vary from their number of or else ownership of resources. Right? These people might vary from ownership of resources. Capital and might vary from their efforts also. Specifically in terms of labor. That is labor. So these people need to get, right? Need to get their earnings, right? Earnings based on these can be, right? Maybe the ownership එක වෙන්න පුළුවන් නැත්නම් effort එක මොන ඒකත් එක්ක තමයි යාළුවගේ earnings හම්බෙන්න ඕනේ. හැබැයි එයාලා වැඩ කරන විදියට එයාලා දාන effort එකට එයාලට earnings හම්බෙන්නේ නැත්නම් if this is not going to happen, that is called inequity. In Sri Lanka, in most of the countries, the problem is inequity. Right? කෙනෙක් වැඩිපුර වැඩ කරාට, right? කෙනෙක් අඩුවෙන් වැඩ කරලා, they might be earning, right, kind of a higher proportion than the person who have put more effort, less effort. More effort කෙනාගේ earnings need to be increased than this. But if this is not happen, then it is called inequity. The make the problem. Inequity is the real problem that we have in the economy. Right? So when we look at inequity and inequality, right, specifically, inequality but inequity is what we really need to understand. Right? So inequity, we can check this inequity based on, right, few measurements. Make up measure කරන්න අපිට තියෙනවා පොඩි gimmicks ටිකක්. Right? But looking at inequity it can be what, right? Maybe a problem that happens, right? That happens either due to right, is mainly happening due to income. Right? Income එක තමයි problem එක තියෙන්නේ. So income can happen, the problem might happen either functional distribution එක, a problem in your functional distribution, functional income distribution, or else your personal income distribution. සමහර වෙලාවට සමහර jobs තියෙනවා in the economy which is function. ඒ කියන්නේ අපේ jobs. සමහර job වලට හම්බෙන්න ඕනේ income එක හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ. Simple best example is governmental teachers. Governmental teachers අට හම්බෙන්න ඕනේ salary එක එයාලගේ effort එකට, එයාලගේ දෙන contribution එකට එයාලට හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ. Right? That is a problem happens in the functional income distribution. ඔයා කොච්චර වැඩ කරාද, ඔයා කොච්චර effort එකක් දුන්නත් ඒ problem එක තියෙන්නේ මෙතන. Right? සමහර problem එක තියෙනවා function එක අවුලක් නැහැ. Problem එක යාලගේ personal income එකේ. This might happen due to this sometimes. Then simple example එක, let's take the royal family of Sri Lanka, which is the Rajapakshians. The යාලගේ එක අපේ ඔය compare කරපුවම they have more properties, right? අපිට වඩා තියෙනවා. සමහර properties නැතුව ඇති, but they earn a higher number, higher value, higher earning than us. That's a personal income distribution problem. එක මනුස්සයෙක් distribution එකේ problem එකක්. මේක එක එකගේ job එකේ ප්‍රශ්නයක්. හිතන්නකො ඕනම කෙනෙක් දැන් ඔයාලා වුණත් one day if you step into a state governmental teacher ඒ position එකට ගියොත් no matter how good you are, you will earn the same salary. මේ strike කරේ ගිය අවුරුද්දේ because why? It's a functional income distribution problem, not a personal one. But personal problems තමයි අපිට හැමෝටම තියෙන්නේ. ඇයි personal වෙන්නේ? Mainly sometimes due to this or else ඔයාගේ wage rate එකේ problem එකක්. Right? ඒක තමයි main two reasons what things come into play. However, in your exam, what they basically test you is how are you really going to measure this inequality? The first and foremost that which you can test, right, or else which you can check your inequality is the Lorenz curve. Alfred Lorenz find this one, which is called the Lorenz curve. Then the next one is called the Gini coefficient. Right, Gini coefficient, and the last one is quintile dispersion ratio. දැන් මෙන්න මේකෙන් නම් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම MCQ එකක් ආවම මෙන්න මේ දෙකෙන් specifically there would definitely be an MCQ at your exam. At least one MCQ would be there from these two. අනිවාර්යෙන් එකක් හරි දෙකක් හරි අනිවාර්යෙන් මේ දෙකෙන් තියෙනවාමයි. හරිද? හරි. Let's understand this Lorenz curve and then into Gini coefficient. Lorenz curve. What Lorenz curve identifies is that it says, given the context, right? Right. What Lorenz curve mentioned and what Lorenz curve says is that අපි ගමු අපි income එක අපි economy එකේ ඉන්නවා income economy එකේ ඉන්න population total population එක අපි consider කරොත් එහෙම let's take a population and let's take the income. Right, so we have the population, right, who really, right, population the 10 lowest 10% of the population who on the lowest. It is 10%. It 10%. Up to 10 times you can have 10 people. 10 lowest 10, middle 10, maybe 10% highest 10%. The lowest 10%. So what does Lorenz curve mean? Lorenz curve again, Lorenz curve again කියනවා. අපි මේක 10 split කරන්න, right? Ideally your income අපි assume කරනවා, right? Or as ideal state, best case. The best case is also what? The best case also need to be what? මෙයාට ඉන්න income එක total income economic total income total GDP 10% on කරන්න ඕනේ මේ 10. හිතන්න අපි class එකක් ගන්න අපි class එකේ ඉන්න 100 people. එතකොට 100 people වලට මම income එක equal distribute කරොත්, right? එතකොට පළවෙනි 10 ගත්තොත් ඒ 10 earn කරන්නේ same amount 10යි. ඊටු 10 earn කරන්නේ same amount 10යි. Right? Something like that. So the first 10 of the population, the lowest 10 of the population need to occupy 10% of the total income. Next 10 have to achieve 10% of the total income. Make a 10 make a 10 make a 20 make a 30 make a 50 make a 50 CI. Altogether it have to be 100, then it have to be 100. This is the best case scenario. So what it means is this is your equity curve. Line of equity, right? මේක තමයි වාගේ මොකද line of equity එක. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ equity you can see, right? Accumulated income and accumulated population. නැත්නම් මේක shift කරන්න පුළුවන් එහාට මේ population එකයි income එකයි එහාට මෙහාට දාන්න පුළුවන්. Right? Income and the population, right? Population and the income split. This is line of equity. Right? එතකොට අපි simple example එකක් දැම්මොත් මේ තමයි ඔයාලගේ poorest කට්ටිය. හරිද? මේ තමයි මේ ඔයාලගේ poorest poorම කට්ටිය. මේ වගේ high income richest කට්ටිය. හරිද? හැබැයි economy එක equally නම් distribute වෙන්නේ. කිසිම කාටවත් කරදරයක් නැහැ. කාටවත් අපි කියන්නේ මේ favor කරන්නේ නැත්නම් it have to be something like this නේ. මේ කට්ටිය same. මේ 10% නම් මෙයාලා 10%. එතකොට මෙතන 50% නම් have to be මෙතන 80% නම් have to be 80%. This is ideally what we need to happen. ඒක අපි කියන්නේ මොකද line of equity කියලා. හැබැයි what's the problem? The problem is it is not the problem. The problem is economy එකක් ගැන focus කරපුවාම අපි economy එකේ main income එක right total income එක එන කතා කරොත් එහෙම it goes like this. Right, what happens? It starts from somewhere like this and it goes like this. Right? Total population එකෙන් ළමයි 5% වගේ, right? From the total population, at least 5% earn around 20% of your income. Look, now it is not equal, right? Now it is not equal. Look, 5% earns 20% of your income. I get it on 5% now, 5% went on it. 10% now, 10% went on it. Have 5% of income is earned by 20% of the population. This is identified as the Lorenz curve. Mathematical explanation එක පෙන්නන්නේ මෙන්න මේකෙන් Lorenz curve එකෙන්. හරිද? මේ තමයි වාගේ මොකද්ද? Perfect line of equality. Then this is your inequality line එක. මේක තමයි වාගේ යන්නේ inequality එක, right? Actual income distribution එක පෙන්නන්නේ මෙන්න මේකෙන්. එතකොට generally exam focus කරන්න ඕනේ. exam focus කරන්න ඕනේ, right? exam එකේදී අහන එක type එක question එකක් තමයි මෙන්න මේක. You can see this paper. exam එකේදී අහන frequent එකක් තමයි මෙන්න මේ කතාව. Right, you have couple of curves. Curve A, curve A and curve B, right? So you can see the top line curve is curve A and curve B, right? So the exam, basically exam kind of question which is having the highest inequality. මට කියන්න බලන්න highest inequality එක තියෙන්නේ මොකේද? curve A එකේද curve B එකේද? inequality වැඩි මොකේද? A එකේද B එකේද? ඕක තමයි exam එකෙන් frequently මහන question එක. Lorenz curve එකෙන් frequently මහන්නේ. curve එක අර අපි කියන්නේ මේ bend එක. මේක මේ පැත්තට වෙන්නද inequality වැඩි? මේක ළඟ වෙන්න inequality වැඩි. ඕක තමයි exam එකේදී අහන්නේ frequently. Right, good, huh? Right, so it have to be what? It have to be B. So මෙන්න මේක මතක තියාගන්න. exam එකේදී අහනවා but අමාරු නෑ easily කොට දාගන්න පුළුවන්. මොකක්ද? මේක මෙහාට shift and inequality is high. මේක ළඟ වෙන්න මොකද වෙන්නේ? equity line එකට ළඟ වෙන්න means inequality is less, right? ඕක තමයි you need to know. So the next one is Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient කියන්නේ මේක graphical illustration එකක්, මේක mathematical illustration එක තමයි Gini coefficient කියන්නේ. Right? It's an equation. Right? Gini coefficient එක හදන්න මෙහෙම. අපි බලමු parts එක. This is A and this is B. Assume this is A and this is B. Right? Ideally, Gini coefficient කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? Right? මේක තමයි දැන් ඊළඟට exam එකේදී අහන part එක. Gini coefficient එක හොයන්නේ කොහොමද? Right? A and B. Gini coefficient means, right? මම කියන්නේ මේ line එක ලඟ වෙන මොකද වෙන්නේ? Right? මොකද වෙන්නේ? A part එක අඩු වෙනවා. So you identify a coefficient, right, as A. අපි බලන්න මොකද? ඔයාගේ gap එක, inequity gap එක. Right? මේ line එක ASCII කුයි දෙකක් ඉන්නවා. කොච්චර gap එකක් තියෙනවද? Right? And you are going to check it and You are going to divide it by the total area. A divided by A plus B. Right? A and A plus B. Right? A into A plus B is identified as Gini coefficient. Now the next problem comes. Then ඊළඟට exam එකේ අහන්නේ. Right? Gini coefficient එක, right? බිංදුව වුණොත් හොඳ, Gini coefficient එක 1 වුණොත් හොඳ. Which is having the highest inequality හොයන්න. Highest inequality. Can highest inequality comes, Gini coefficient becomes 1 or 0. Highest inequality කියන්නේ Gini coefficient එක 1 වුණොත්ද බිංදුව වුණොත්ද? බලන්න කල්පනා කරන්න. Right? මේ පැත්තට යන්න what happens? Your A becomes high. A becomes high means what? Tendency that A also B එකක් නැහැ කියලා හිතන්න. A එක මෙතන තියෙනවා නම් මොකක්ද? A plus B divided by A plus B. By any chance, if it is 1, it is the highest unequal scenario. මේක තමයි අනිත් එක මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ එක්සෑම් එකේදී P කොටි අහන පොයින්ට්ස් ආ මේ එක්සෑම් එකේ අනිවාර්යෙන්ම අහනවා මේක. මේ දෙක තමයි එක්සෑම් එකේදී P කොටි අහන්නේ අනිවාර්යෙන් you will get a question. Right? Hard. Next one is the quintile dispersion ratio. මේක නම් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට එක්සෑම් එකේදී mathematically අහන්න calculate කරන්න හදන්නේ අහන්න කියන්නේ නැහැ. But දනන් ඉන්න එකේ පාඩුවක් නැහැ. Right? So quintile dispersion ratio එක කියන්නේ you see, right? දැන් මේ කතාවේදී අපි කතා කරනවානේ 5% need to 5%, 10% need to 10%, 80% need to 80%, 100% need to 100%, something like that. Right? Now what we do is, now we identify, right? You check how much of a dispersion has happened. So for that what you do is you check lowest 20%, right? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ගමු පොඩිම income එකේ අපි ගමු poorest 20%, right? We see quintile dispersion ratio, we see, right, how much the mean, right, the mean household income of richest, the mean income of richest 20%. රටේ ඉන්න ධනවත්ම richest 20% එයාලගේ mean income එක අරගෙන බලනවා. The mean income of poorest 20%. This is how you get the quintile dispersion ratio. Then ඊළඟ ප්‍රශ්නේ highest inequality. Highest inequality කියන්නේ QDR එක, right? QDR එක වැඩි වෙන්නද වැඩි වුණොත්ද inequality වැඩි, QDR එක අඩු වුණොත්ද? මට කියන්න. QDR එක කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? අපි ගන්න කොහොමද mathematical illustration එක we take the mean income of this top 20. මේ top 20 යන්නේ mean income එක, average income එක ගන්න. And you divide it by the lowest 20 ලගේ income level එක. ඒ දෙක අරන් බලනවා මොකක්ද තියෙන variation එක, dispersion එක කියලා. So that's a simple mathematical part. මට කියන්න QDR, you get a number, right? මේ number එක increase, right? එහෙම නැත්නම් ලොකු number එකක් ආවොත්, right? number එක වැඩි වෙන්න what happens? Inequality අඩු වෙනවත්. number එක වැඩි වෙන්න inequality වැඩි වෙනවා. What happens? It have to be QDR. Highest inequality comes when the QDR is increasing or QDR is decreasing. That's what you need to know. Simple like that. Yes. The highest dispersion comes or else the QDR is මොකද වෙන්නේ? Problem inequality වැඩි වෙන්නේ කොහමද? When the QDR is increasing, QDR එක ලොකු number එකක් එන්න all the time. Right? What happens? Your inequality is increasing. ඒ කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Top part එක මෙයාලගේ top richest කට්ටියගේ income එක වැඩි වෙන්න පොඩි කට්ටිය එකක අඩු වෙන්න the QDR dispersion ratio එක ලොකු number එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ number එක ලොකු වෙනවා කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Tendency that there is high income inequality. Right? ඕක තමයි අනිත් part එක that what you need to know. හරි මතක තියාගන්න ඔය චුට්ට. Inequality කොහොමද හොයන්නේ? Inequality කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Inequity කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Inequality අපි ලොකු case එකක් නෑ. අපි ඉංග්‍රීසි ගැන වැඩි කතා කරන්නේ නෑ. අපිට case එක මොකද්ද? Inequity. Inequity එන්නේ ඇයි? Due to income issues. Income issues. ඒතර inequity කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? හරිනම් වැඩිපුර resources තියෙන කෙනා වැඩිපුර earn කරන්න ඕනේ. වැඩිපුර effort එකක් දෙන කෙනා වැඩිපුර earn කරන්න ඕනේ. හැබැයි problem comes why income එකේ issues එනවා. Income issues in either it's a functional income problem. ඒ කියන්නේ වාගේ job එකේ ප්‍රශ්නයක්, function එකේ ප්‍රශ්නයක්, or else වාගේ personal income එකේ problem. ඒතර මේක අපි calculate කරන්න ඕනේ, measure කරන්න. How to measure? You have three techniques to measure. Lorenz curve, Gini coefficient, and quantile dispersion ratios. Lorenz curve means what? Lorenz curve means the graphical illustration which is identified economist Lorenz on the inequality or sorry the inequity of the business or inequity of the economy. They take the population and their income. We see up 10% of the population kocharak earn karnawada. Lowest 10% kocharak earn karnawada. Highest 10% kocharak earn karnawada. Something like that. Ideally it have to be the lowest 10% need to earn 10% of the economy. Highest 10% need to earn 10% of the economy. If it goes like this, we call it as the line of equity. But the problem is it is not going like that. But this is the actual line of income. So the gap between these two is identify your poverty gap, the inequality gap. Sorry, the inequality gap, right? So make identify as a Gini coefficient in the mathematical form. So Gini coefficient is what? A, the inequity gap. A can inequity gap. Right? A divided by A plus B. හදිසියරි ඒක එකකට ලං වෙනවා නම් එක වෙනවා නම් it means inequality is high. මෙතන curve එක පල්ලෙහාට යනවා නම් right? පල්ලෙහාට යනවා නම් inequality is high. The last one is the quintile dispersion ratio which identifies the mean income level of the richest 20% and the poorest 20%. We get a simple ratio. මේ ratio එක වැඩි වෙන QDR එක වැඩි වෙන but it means the income inequality is increasing. QDR එක අඩු වෙනවා. Pretty much like එක වගේ රංගෙන්නේ. Right? It means what? The inequality is zero. Right? Something like that. හරිද ළමයි? හරි. If anyone wants to have a step, snap it. Right? Harinam. So with this, we can officially wind the class for the day. So as I mentioned, we will be having a small document prepared by myself with the latest numbers, which you need to by heart for your exam, and also this development indexes parts. Now development index criteria again little bit to katapada, but again keep this thing in your mind. MCQs might need to come, will come from that part also, but pretty much more MCQs come those for the part we discussed today: population, economic growth, population, labor force, unemployment, and then again on the poverty and inequality. Make අනිවාර්යෙන්ම අහනවා. අමාරු නෑ. හරිම ලේසි. පොඩ්ඩක් මේ අර දේවල් මතක තියාගන්න, right? Specifically මෙන්න මේකේ කොහමද ගණන් ටික හදන්නේ කියන එක, right? Other than that, things are under control. හරි ළමයි. So with this, we wind the class for this year, right? I would be personally happy that we started this class back in last few months back, and things went in a different manner. I never even imagined that this class would be this successful. I hope it is also successful for you. That's why at least until this last moment that you guys are here with me, right? So can you explain functional and personal income distribution? Yes. What do you mean by functional income distribution is, right? Simple context. Again, depending on your function, right? Depending on your function, your income might distribute. The example what I gave you was a doctor, a lawyer, a person like that way. Hitanna ඔයාගේ inequality ගන්න ඉන්නේ. මම කිව්වා inequality එන්නේ නැත්තේ මොකද්ද? ඔයා දෙන effort එකට ඔයාට හරි benefit එකක් එන්න ඕනේ. හරිද? හැබැයි simple example. Let's say functional income distribution. A governmental teacher and a tuition teacher. Right? Let's be honest, right? Who earns more? Who earns more? Government teacher earns less, but a private sector teacher or is a tuition teacher and private sector school like teacher earns high. Why? They do the same thing, but it's basically due to their functional distribution problem. That is identified as the functional distribution, income distribution problem, right? Income either it's a functional income distribution or as a personal income distribution. Functional okay, job title job that income distribute here and there. Other thing is personal income distribution. This is what? This is not based on your function. This is based on individual. Like Dilshani, Dinelta, Dulsha, Esuri, Aniraz, Andipa, it goes like that. Dinelta, Tivangi, it goes as personal. Where the income make a distributed media tech, you either might be inequity or not. It income depends on what? On your effort, but top of that might be on your ownership of resources. You can what a very ownership resources, but very earn. What are doing people are doing earn? Because it's a personal income distribution thing. Job back right? Impact impact in what resources effort. Teacher income determined based on their function. Job back. AI private sector job back effort hours but income income it's a functional income distribution thing. Slight differentiation that you need to understand what do you mean by that. Hari. So apart from that, what I mentioned was happy to have you guys here. So I wish you all the best for the next year. Next year going to be very crucial and going to be very happy and we're going to be very successful. I hope so. So we are breaking the class for the day and for this year, and we'll be meeting up in the next year with a brand new smile, with a brand new page, with a brand new chapter in your life, in a brand new month. But we will have the same exam. So try to keep the momentum go. And let's stop the class for the day and let's meet up in the next year, in the new year, in the new phase, with a new smile and with a new hope. So Ramai, thank you and God bless and good night. And I'm wishing you the best for the next new year, 2022, right? And classes on first, I'll let you know on whether are we going to have the classes on first or not. We might be having classes on first. I hope that you guys would be okay. Barry will not. I'll let you know whether if students have any concerns. Else not, we'll have a cover-up class. We don't have time to waste here and there. I'll let you know in the group whether we have classes on first or not. Right? Most probably, yes, we will have classes. I hope you guys would be okay with it. We don't have that much of time to spare. Hari lamai, that's it from my end. Then thank you and God bless and good night. And wish you a very, very prosperous new year coming up in 2022. Let's meet up in 2022 as discussed and as plans. Hari lamai, Hari. Okay then, bye-bye. Take care and God bless. Good night.